Hi, I'm Luke Sladica. I'm here with John Smith. I'm currently the chair of the Historic Preservation Committee, and John's a local historian and also on the Preservation Committee as well. And we're here to talk to you a little bit about the Lime Kiln in town here on Main Street. John, when was the Lime Kiln built?
Well, the earliest records I have show it was built in 1794.
Oh, wow, that was
it's a long time ago. It had a slow start, and production increased gradually over the years, and by 1835 it was at this high volume.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. And where would they get the lime to put in the kiln? Is that local as well?
That is local. The main quarry is directly behind us. It's a great big hole right now, but it started out as a little hole, and they dug it out over the years, over several hundred years. There were also quarries around the town, most of which are behind me and you, up Willow Avenue. So the whole town is underlined with caves, so it was brought in from a number of locations, including across the road here.
Wow. So John, how did the kiln work? I was in there a minute ago looking at the, I guess the limestone would be put in from the top. Is that kind of what would happen?
Yes.
Maybe you could explain it to us a little
bit?
Well,
chunks of limestone, about 8 to 10 inches in size, were pushed in from the top and consecutively layered with charcoal, or actually I should say a fine coal called rice coal. Mm-hmm. They're similar to charcoal. Then there were probably a half a dozen layers of each as you worked your way up the top. And down at the bottom, in the bottom of the kiln right here, they took a lot of kindling wood and set fire to it in order to set fire to the stack, you might say, as it was above. Once the fires were lit on the bottom, then it would burn up through the stack and gradually cook the limestone.
Okay.
It wouldn't change its configuration, but it would change the way it was
pulverize
put
it
together.
almost, the heat?
Well, no, they pulverized it later.
Okay.
Yeah. After it was properly burned, then they would put it in a grinder. And there are two ways they would do it. They would grind it when it was in the coarse shape, and then there'd be another machine that would pulverize it even smaller, so it would come out as like sugar.
Oh, wow.
It would be loose, and then they could bag it right away, put it in 50-pound bags.
And how much lime, do you have any idea how much lime they could actually, well, how much weight they can get out of this in a day? Is it a couple 100 pounds? Or?
No, in its high time, from 1835 throughout the 1800s, they would produce 100 tons every day.
100 tons a day?
Which is amazing.
I can't even imagine that many. You must have all these carts lined up just to bring the limestone up here, right?
There was a lot of people here. There's a platform where they had a barn that they stored the limestone in.
Okay.
You can still see the base of it as it sits now.
Okay.
And trucks would back up off the road and load it right off that platform that was just about the right height for a truck. And when I was young, in my earlier years, in the 1950s, I actually came over here and bought limestone myself.
Did you really?
I'm that old.
Well, one of the other interesting things I noticed about this, and we were chatting about this earlier, is it seems like there's a kind of a divide between the two, because there's the one side here and another one over here, where there was one built first and then another one later?
It's hard to say which one, but I think the one to the left side, and this was probably a new addition. If you look inside, you can see where the opening to the fire material would drop, and then they collect it right here with shovels and then take it to the shed for grinding. It looks like they did well for many years, and then they prospered so much that they had to build another kiln, and they were both running at the same time.
Wow. So John, I got another question for you. What did they use the limestone for when, back in the day? You mentioned that they had so many tons of it that they'd produce on a day. What would they use all that limestone for?
Okay. Well, the main use was to spread on fields for agricultural purposes to sweeten the soil, to make it less acid. That's probably 90% of the limestone was used for that.
Okay.
The second use was to actually make mortar And we still use lime today to make mortar.
Cement, yeah.
Portland cement,
Yep.
with or without lime. And the lime made the cement stick better to whatever you were working with. And so they're the two main uses.
John, what kind of lime was it, or limestone was it, that they would use in this kiln?
Okay, there were two kinds. Well, the stone was the same both ways. The product, which was with two different
Produced
types.
was different. Okay.
The one type was called pulverized limestone, where they wouldn't use the kiln. They would just take the lime and grind it up with two sets of grinders, a big grinder and a little grinder.
Yep.
And they would sell that directly, and that would be spread on the fields. It would take longer to break down, but that's how they use it. The other one was called hydrated lime, which was more serious. That was put through the kiln, burned and crushed again, turned into a fine powder-like substance that was easier to handle.
Probably more expensive too.
Oh yes, it took a lot more time, more labor.
Yep. So John, what can you tell me about the owners of the kiln?
Okay, the first owner was Edwin Perry, who actually lived in the house just to our left, or the right of the camera.
Yep.
And he owned it for quite a few years, and then eventually leased it to a man named Todd. For the first 15 years, Mr. Todd actually leased the quarry from Mr. Perry. But eventually, when he got his foot on the ground, made a little more profit, he eventually bought it from Mr. Perry, and then Perry dropped out of the picture. And Todd took it the rest of the way. There are some streets in town named Todd Avenue after him.
Right. So John, I know you had mentioned earlier that there was a quarry back behind here. Can you talk a little bit about how they would maybe extract that, or how they would get the rock from there? Okay.
It was all done by horses in the first few hundred years. Two-wheel carriages pulled by a single horse would bring the lime to the top of the kiln. Also in the quarry, which is directly behind us, which is a very big quarry right now, by the time they dug all this stone out, every time they would blast, they used dynamite to blast, to free the stone so they could get it easier. And when they did, they would precede the blast with a whistle. They would blow through the town, and so all the townsfolk knew what was going on here, because if they heard a whistle, that means they're going to blast.
That means stay away.
That's right. Stay in your house, they said. It would blow limestone all over the town.
Wow. I'm here now with Pat Delaney, who's also on the Historic Preservation Committee. And Pat, I understand, I see you're holding a little check there, or a big check, I should say. What is this?
A big check.
Yes.
We were awarded this money from the Somerset County Historic Preservation Trust in order to preserve the lime kilns that John so eloquently spoke about.
It's great. I understand that we're working with the Historical Society of the Somerset Hills. Can you tell me a little bit about what that project is and what we're trying to accomplish with the kiln?
Absolutely. What we're trying to accomplish, first of all, with the kiln is to preserve it for future generations to be able to see an example of what our industrial and agricultural past was all about. So originally in Peapack there had been 15 existing kilns. Wow. And these are the only two that are left, and we've been told that they're one of the finest examples actually of lime kilns in New Jersey.
Wow.